Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Society. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe the day wore you down, or perhaps you're one of those souls who finds comfort in quiet learning as the world outside grows still. Either way, you're exactly where you need to be. Tonight, we're journeying to some of the most extreme places on our planet, deserts. And if you find these gentle explorations helpful as you drift towards sleep, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps other curious minds discover this space, one restful evening at a time. Now, let your breathing slow, your thoughts soften, and let's begin our exploration of life where water is precious and survival is an art. When most people hear the word desert, they picture endless seas of golden sand dunes rippling beneath a merciless sun. Perhaps camels walking single file across the horizon, or a lone cactus standing sentinel against a cloudless sky. But deserts are far more than these familiar images suggest. They are places of astonishing complexity, home to life forms that have spent millions of years perfecting the art of survival in conditions that would quickly overwhelm most living things. Deserts are not defined by sand or heat alone, but by a single critical factor: the scarcity of water. A desert, in scientific terms, is any region that receives less than 250 millimeters of precipitation annually. That's less than 10 inches of rain in an entire year. To put that in perspective, many temperate forests receive that much rainfall in just a single month. This profound lack of water creates an environment where every drop is precious, every adaptation meaningful, and every organism's existence hangs in a delicate balance between ingenious survival strategies and the harsh realities of extreme aridity. But deserts are not uniform. They vary dramatically in temperature, soil composition, and the life they harbor. Some deserts, like the Sahara in North Africa or the Sonoran in North America, bake under intense heat during the day, with temperatures soaring beyond 50 degrees Celsius. These are the hot deserts, places where the sun feels like a physical weight pressing down from above. Yet, even in these scorching environments, nighttime brings a dramatic shift. Without cloud cover to trap the day's warmth, temperatures can plummet by 20 or 30 degrees Celsius within hours. This extreme diurnal range, the difference between day and night temperatures, is one of the defining characteristics of many desert regions. Then there are the cold deserts, places where winter temperatures dive far below freezing and snow occasionally dusts the ground. The Gobi Desert in Asia, the Great Basin in North America, and parts of the Patagonian Desert in South America are cold deserts. Here, the challenge for life is not just dryness, but also bitter cold. The combination of aridity and low temperatures creates unique selection pressures, and the organisms that thrive in these places have evolved different strategies than their hot desert relatives. Coastal deserts like the Atacama in Chile and the Namib in southwestern Africa present yet another variation. These deserts lie near cold ocean currents that prevent moisture-laden air from releasing rain over land. Instead, thick fogs roll in from the sea, creating an eerie landscape where water exists but cannot be easily accessed. Life in these places has learned to harvest moisture from fog itself, a remarkable adaptation we'll explore more deeply as we continue. Deserts cover about 1/3 of Earth's land surface. They exist on every continent, from the frozen expanses of Antarctica. Yes, Antarctica is technically a desert because it receives so little precipitation, to the hot sands of Australia, Africa, and the Middle East. These arid lands are not wastelands. They are ecosystems in their own right, shaped by water scarcity into something unique and resilient. They are places where life doesn't just survive but flourishes in ways that challenge our understanding of what's possible. The soil beneath the desert surface, the plants that dot the landscape, the animals that emerge at dusk, all are connected in intricate webs of dependence and adaptation. Deserts teach us about limits, about resourcefulness, about the extraordinary capacity of life to find a foothold even in the most unlikely places. And tonight, as you rest, we'll explore these lessons together, moving through the hidden worlds that exist beneath the sun-scorched surface of our planet's driest places. The hidden soil world. Let your mind settle now into the ground itself, beneath your feet if you were standing in a desert. The soil here is different from what you might find in a forest or a meadow. It's often sandy or rocky, sometimes salty, and usually low in organic matter. But look closer, really look, and you'll discover something extraordinary. In many deserts, the soil surface is alive. Across large swaths of arid and semi-arid lands, the ground is covered by what scientists call biological soil crusts, sometimes known as cryptobiotic crusts. These living layers might look like nothing more than a dark, bumpy crust on the soil, perhaps with hints of green, gray, or even black. But these unassuming surfaces are miniature ecosystems unto themselves, composed of cyanobacteria, lichens, mosses, fungi, and algae, all bound together in a cohesive community. Cyanobacteria are the pioneers here, microscopic organisms that arrived on Earth billions of years ago and were among the first life forms to colonize land. In the desert, these blue-green bacteria anchor themselves to soil particles using thread-like filaments. As they grow, they secrete sticky polysaccharides, long chains of sugar molecules that glue sand and dust grains together. Slowly, patiently, over years and decades, they build a stable crust on the soil surface. This process can take anywhere from 20 to 100 years or even longer to create a well-developed, robust crust. These biological crusts perform functions that are essential to the desert ecosystem. First, and most visibly, they stabilize the soil. Without vegetation cover to protect it, desert soil is vulnerable to wind and water erosion. A strong gust can strip away the finest particles, leaving behind only rocks and gravel. A sudden rainstorm can create flash floods that carve deep channels through loose sediment. But biological soil crusts bind the soil particles together, creating a protective layer that resists erosion. They act as a living armor for the ground beneath them. Second, these crusts are nitrogen fixers. Cyanobacteria have the remarkable ability to take nitrogen gas from the atmosphere and convert it into forms that plants can use. Nitrogen is often a limiting nutrient in desert ecosystems because organic matter, The usual source of nitrogen in soil is so scarce. By fixing atmospheric nitrogen, biological soil crusts enrich the soil, making nutrients available for the sparse vegetation that manages to take root. In this way, they are the invisible gardeners of the desert, fertilizing the ground without any human intervention. Third, biological crusts influence water dynamics in complex ways. In some soils, particularly sandy ones, the crusts can become slightly hydrophobic when dry, causing water to bead up and run off rather than soaking in. This might seem counterproductive, but it can actually help direct water to the roots of nearby plants, rather than letting it spread thinly across the surface where it would quickly evaporate. In other soil types, especially those with more silt and clay, the rough texture of lichen crusts slows the flow of water, giving it more time to infiltrate into the ground. The effect depends on the specific composition of the crust and the underlying soil. But in either case, these crusts are active participants in determining how water moves through the desert landscape. The formation of these crusts is a slow, patient process that mirrors the unhurried pace of desert life itself. It begins when airborne spores of cyanobacteria settle on bare soil. If conditions are right, if there is just enough moisture from dew or a brief rain, the bacteria begin to grow, extending their filaments through the top layer of soil. As they multiply and die, they leave behind organic matter that contributes to soil structure. Over time, lichens and mosses join the community, adding complexity and resilience. The crust thickens, darkens, and becomes more effective at its various roles. But this slow creation can be undone in an instant. A single footstep can crush years or decades of growth. Off-road vehicles can leave scars that persist for centuries. When the crust is broken, the exposed soil beneath becomes vulnerable to erosion again. Wind picks up the loose particles, carrying away not just dirt, but also the nutrients that had been slowly accumulating. Water runs off more quickly, deepening the damage. The recovery time is measured not in months or years, but in decades or even centuries. This is why desert conservation efforts often emphasize a simple message: don't bust the crust. Beneath even these crusts, the desert soil itself holds stories. Desert soils tend to be alkaline, with high pH levels, and they often contain significant concentrations of salts. In some desert regions, the soil contains more inorganic carbon than organic carbon. This inorganic carbon is primarily in the form of calcium carbonate, formed when carbon dioxide from the atmosphere or from root respiration dissolves in soil water and then precipitates out as carbonate minerals. Desert plants, particularly those with deep root systems, can actually enhance this process, contributing to the long-term storage of carbon in the soil in a form that's much more stable than organic matter. The microbial communities in desert soils are unique, adapted to extremes of temperature, dryness, and high solar radiation. These microorganisms spend much of their time in a dormant state, waiting for the brief periods when water becomes available. When rain does fall, they spring into action with remarkable speed. Within hours, microbial activity surges. Bacteria and fungi begin breaking down organic matter, releasing nutrients that had been locked away. This pulse of microbial activity following rainfall is one of the defining rhythms of desert ecosystems. Some desert microorganisms have evolved strategies to withstand desiccation that would kill most other life forms. They produce protective compounds, enter dormant spore stages, or surround themselves with biofilms that retain tiny amounts of moisture. When water returns, these organisms can rehydrate and resume their metabolic activities almost immediately. It's a kind of suspended animation, a biological patience that allows life to persist through months or even years of drought. Interestingly, desert soils also harbor communities of detritivores, organisms that consume dead plant material. In many ecosystems, decomposition is primarily driven by moisture-dependent microbial activity. But in deserts, where microbes are limited by water availability, larger organisms play a surprisingly important role. Desert isopods, for instance, are macrodetritivores that actively harvest plant litter from the surface and carry it underground into their burrows. There, in the slightly more humid microenvironment of their burrows, they consume the litter and create nutrient-rich deposits. Studies have shown that soils around isopod burrows have significantly higher nitrogen concentrations than surrounding soils, demonstrating that these small arthropods are key regulators of nutrient cycling in some desert ecosystems. The soil world of deserts is far from empty or inert. It's a living matrix, a foundation upon which the more visible life of the desert depends. It fixes nitrogen from thin air, binds sand into stable surfaces, mediates water flow, and cycles nutrients through networks of microorganisms and small invertebrates that most desert visitors never see. It's a reminder that even in places defined by absence of water, of greenery, of obvious life, there is always something happening, always some form of existence finding its way. Plant adaptations and survival strategies. Now, let your attention drift upward from the soil to the plants themselves, the primary producers of the desert ecosystem. Plants in deserts face a fundamental challenge. They need water to photosynthesize, to transport nutrients, to maintain their cellular structure. Yet water is the one resource that's chronically scarce. The plants that thrive in these environments have evolved an astonishing array of adaptations to solve this problem. And their strategies reveal the creativity of evolution when pressed to its limits. Desert plants are collectively known as xerophytes, a term that literally means dry plants. But this simple label encompasses an enormous diversity of forms and strategies. Let's begin with perhaps the most iconic desert plants: succulents, particularly cacti. Succulents have taken the straightforward approach of storing water when it's available and then using those reserves to survive long dry periods. The thick, fleshy stems of a saguaro cactus, for instance, can store hundreds of liters of water. The stem itself is ribbed like an accordion, allowing it to expand when full of water and contract as the water is used up. But storing water is only half the battle. Equally important is preventing water loss. Most plants lose water through their leaves via a process called transpiration. Water evaporates from tiny pores called stomata on the leaf surface. Cacti have solved this problem by eliminating leaves altogether. What look like leaves on a cactus are actually modified stems, and the spines you see are modified leaves, reduced to thin projections that minimize surface area. Without broad leaves, cacti dramatically reduce the amount of water they lose to evaporation. The spines serve other purposes too. They provide shade to the cactus's surface, reducing heat absorption. They deter animals from eating the water-rich flesh. And in some species, they help channel fog or dew droplets down toward the plant's base. Every feature has multiple functions, an elegant efficiency born of millions of years of selection. Cacti and many other succulents also employ a specialized form of photosynthesis called CAM, which stands for crassulacean acid metabolism. In most plants, photosynthesis happens during the day when sunlight is available. But this requires opening stomata to take in carbon dioxide, and open stomata mean water loss. KM plants have found a workaround. They open their stomata at night when temperatures are cooler and humidity is higher, minimizing water loss. They capture carbon dioxide in the darkness and store it in the form of organic acids. Then, during the day, when sunlight is plentiful but stomata are closed, they release the stored carbon dioxide internally and use it for photosynthesis. It's a temporal separation of the two phases of photosynthesis, and it allows these plants to survive in conditions where conventional photosynthesis would be untenable. Not all desert plants are succulents. Another strategy is employed by what are called phreatophytes, plants with extremely deep root systems that tap into underground water sources. Mesquite trees, for instance, can send roots down 50 meters or more to reach deep aquifers or water tables. Once established, these trees become relatively independent of rainfall, drawing water from reserves far below the surface. Their roots create lifelines to water that surface-dwelling organisms can't access. Other desert plants take the opposite approach, developing shallow but extensive root systems that spread out just below the surface. These plants are specialists in capturing rain as soon as it falls. The moment water infiltrates the soil, even from a brief shower, these roots are positioned to absorb it before it can drain away or evaporate. The creosote bush, widespread in North American deserts, has a root system that radiates outward in all directions, forming a circle of resource capture that can extend several meters from the plant's center. Then there are the ephemeral plants, sometimes called annuals, which have adopted perhaps the most extreme strategy of all. They avoid the dry season entirely. These plants exist as seeds for most of the year, dormant and desiccated, waiting in the soil. When rain finally comes, they germinate rapidly, grow quickly, flower, produce seeds, and die, all within a matter of weeks. Their entire life cycle is compressed into the brief window of moisture availability. Desert wildflower blooms, which can transform barren landscapes into carpets of vibrant color seemingly overnight, are the result of this strategy. The seeds of these ephemerals can remain viable in the soil for years, even decades, until conditions are right for germination. Some desert plants, known as resurrection plants, have taken drought tolerance to an almost surreal extreme. These plants can lose up to 95% of their water content, becoming completely desiccated and appearing dead. Their leaves curl up, their color fades to brown, and their metabolic processes shut down almost entirely. Yet they're not dead, merely dormant. When rain returns, these plants can absorb water directly through their leaves and above-ground tissues, swelling back to life within hours or days. The speed of this revival is astonishing, as if the plant had been merely sleeping and has suddenly awakened. Mosses and lichens in biological soil crusts use similar strategies, surviving as dried husks until moisture arrives and revives them. Many desert shrubs have small, waxy leaves coated with a thick cuticle that reduces water loss. Some have leaves covered in tiny hairs that create a boundary layer of still air around the leaf surface, further reducing evaporation. Others have the ability to shed their leaves entirely during the driest periods, becoming bare and dormant until conditions improve. The ocotillo, a distinctive plant of the Sonoran Desert, can produce and shed leaves multiple times in a single year in response to rainfall patterns, essentially turning its photosynthetic machinery on and off as needed. Beneath the visible parts of desert plants, there's another phenomenon worth noting: the creation of what scientists call fertility islands. In deserts, resources are not distributed evenly. Instead, they tend to accumulate in patches beneath and around perennial plants. These plants' roots pull nutrients from a wide area and concentrate them in the soil beneath their canopy. Leaf litter falls and decomposes, adding organic matter. The shade provided by the plant reduces soil temperature and evaporation, creating a slightly more hospitable microenvironment. Wind-blown dust and organic matter accumulate around the plant's base. Over time, the soil directly under and around a desert shrub becomes noticeably richer in nutrients than the bare soil between plants. These fertility islands have important implications for the larger ecosystem. They create microhabitats where other plants can establish, where microbial activity is higher, and where soil structure is more developed. The pattern creates a mosaic landscape: vegetated patches separated by bare ground. This patchiness is not a sign of degradation, but rather a natural feature of many desert ecosystems, a spatial organization that reflects the concentration of resources around individual plants. The diversity of plant adaptations in deserts is a testament to the power of natural selection operating over vast stretches of time. Every shape, every chemical pathway, every behavior has been refined through countless generations of survival and reproduction. These plants are not struggling to live in a hostile environment. They are superbly adapted to the environment they inhabit. The desert is not their punishment, but their home, and they are exquisitely suited to it. Animal life in the desert. As evening falls in the desert, the landscape undergoes a transformation. The oppressive heat of day begins to dissipate, and with the cooling air, life emerges. Animals that spent the daylight hours hidden underground or sheltered in the shade now come forth. The desert, which seemed nearly lifeless under the midday sun, becomes a stage for feeding, hunting, courtship, and survival. Desert animals, like the plants around them, have evolved remarkable adaptations to cope with heat, aridity, and the challenges of finding scarce resources. One of the most widespread behavioral adaptations is nocturnality, being active at night. By sleeping through the hottest parts of the day and emerging only after sunset, desert animals avoid the most extreme temperatures and reduce their exposure to desiccating heat. Kangaroo rats, those small, hopping rodents of North American deserts, are almost entirely nocturnal. They spend the day deep in burrows where the temperature remains relatively cool and humidity is higher than at the surface. These burrows are often sealed with plugs of soil during the day, creating a microenvironment that conserves moisture. Kangaroo rats are also remarkable for their physiological adaptations. They can survive their entire lives without drinking water. Instead, they derive all the moisture they need from the dry seeds they eat. This is possible because of their incredibly efficient kidneys, which produce highly concentrated urine, minimizing water loss. Their feces are also extremely dry. And they have specialized nasal passages that cool exhaled air, causing water vapor to condense and be reabsorbed before it leaves the body. Every possible avenue of water conservation has been exploited. Many desert mammals have evolved similar adaptations. Camels, the iconic animals of hot deserts, have numerous features that allow them to survive extreme aridity. They can tolerate significant fluctuations in body temperature, allowing their bodies to heat up during the day rather than expending water on evaporative cooling. They can then dissipate this heat at night when temperatures drop. Their humps, contrary to popular belief, do not store water, but rather store fat, which can be metabolized to produce energy and, as a byproduct, water. Their kidneys and intestines are extremely efficient at extracting and retaining water. They can drink enormous quantities of water when it's available, up to 100 liters in a matter of minutes, rehydrating rapidly after long periods of deprivation. Reptiles have their own suite of adaptations. Being ectothermic, relying on external heat sources to regulate body temperature, they don't need to consume as much food or water as endothermic mammals of equivalent size. This makes them well suited to environments where food can be scarce. Desert lizards can often go days or even weeks without eating. Some species have specialized salt glands that excrete excess salt, allowing them to consume prey with high salt content without overloading their systems. Many desert reptiles also exhibit behavioral thermoregulation, actively managing their body temperature by moving between sun and shade, between the ground surface and burrows. In the early morning, a lizard might bask on a rock to absorb heat. As the day grows hotter, it retreats to shade or underground. By evening, it might emerge again to hunt in the cooling air. This constant adjustment allows reptiles to maintain optimal body temperatures without expending energy on internal temperature regulation. Snakes, too, are common in deserts, and some have evolved specialized behaviors for movement across loose sand. The sidewinder rattlesnake, for instance, moves in a distinctive sideways, looping motion that minimizes the amount of its body in contact with the hot sand at any given moment and provides good traction on unstable surfaces. This unique locomotion is so well adapted to sandy terrain that it has evolved independently in deserts on different continents. Insects and arthropods make up a large proportion of desert animal diversity, though they're often overlooked. Desert beetles, for instance, have evolved various strategies for harvesting water. Some species in the Namib Desert have bumpy backs that serve as fog collectors. When fog rolls in from the ocean, water droplets condense on the beetle's shell and roll down channels toward its mouthparts. Other beetles collect water by positioning themselves head down on dune slopes, allowing dew to condense on their bodies and trickle into their mouths. Arthropods like scorpions, spiders, and centipedes are well suited to desert life because of their hard exoskeletons, which greatly reduce water loss. They're also generally nocturnal, and many spend the day in burrows or under rocks. Scorpions, in particular, can survive extreme conditions. Some species can reduce their metabolic rate to almost nothing when conditions are harsh, effectively entering a state of near-suspended animation until circumstances improve. The desert isopods mentioned earlier in the context of nutrient cycling are also remarkable survivors. These terrestrial crustaceans create complex burrow systems and are most active during the dry summer months when most other organisms are dormant. They emerge at night to collect plant litter, which they carry back to their burrows. This harvesting behavior not only feeds them, but also accelerates the decomposition and nutrient cycling processes that sustain the entire ecosystem. Birds in deserts face unique challenges, particularly regarding temperature regulation. Many desert birds are pale-colored, reflecting sunlight rather than absorbing it. They may also engage in gular fluttering, rapidly vibrating the throat to promote evaporative cooling, though this does require some water expenditure. Some species, like the roadrunner, are opportunistic omnivores, eating whatever they can find, from insects to small reptiles, adjusting their diet based on availability. Others, like doves, must find water regularly and often fly considerable distances to reach water sources. Larger mammals, like desert bighorn sheep or oryx, have impressive physiological adaptations. Oryx can allow their body temperature to rise significantly during the day, storing heat rather than expending water to cool down. They have specialized blood vessels in their heads that cool blood before it reaches the brain, protecting this vital organ even when body temperature is dangerously high. Many desert ungulates can extract moisture from desert plants that seem too dry to be of use and can go for extended periods without drinking. Food webs in deserts are often more complex than they first appear. The harsh environment supports fewer organisms overall, but those present have found their niches. Many desert food webs rely heavily on seeds, which are a concentrated source of energy and nutrients. Granivores, seed eaters like kangaroo rats, ants, and some birds form an important part of the consumer base. Predators like foxes, coyotes, owls, and snakes feed on these smaller animals. Scavengers like vultures and ravens clean up carrion, recycling nutrients back into the system. Even in the apparent scarcity of desert ecosystems, energy flows and nutrients cycle. The animals here are not merely surviving, but are active participants in ecological processes. They disperse seeds, pollinate flowers, dig burrows that create habitat for others, and cycle nutrients through their waste and their deaths. Life in the desert may be sparse, but it is connected, interdependent, and resilient. Water in the desert. Let's turn our attention now to the substance that defines deserts by its absence: water. In these arid landscapes, water is more than a resource. It's the currency of life, the factor that shapes every aspect of the ecosystem. Understanding water in deserts means understanding not just how little there is, but how it arrives, where it goes, and how life intercepts it during its brief availability. Most deserts receive their limited precipitation in sporadic, unpredictable events. These are not gentle, steady rains, but often intense, brief downpours. A thunderstorm might dump several centimeters of rain in less than an hour, more water than the desert has seen in months. The dry soil, baked and hardened, cannot absorb water quickly enough. Surface crusts, whether biological or physical, may initially repel water. The result is runoff, lots of it. Water streams across the landscape, cutting temporary channels, gathering into seasonal rivers called wadis or arroyos. These ephemeral streams are a defining feature of desert hydrology. For most of the year, they're dry channels filled with sand and rocks. But when rain falls, they transform into rushing torrents, sometimes within minutes. Flash floods are one of the most dangerous phenomena in deserts, catching unwary travelers by surprise. The flood pulse can carry enormous amounts of sediment and debris, reshaping the landscape, depositing nutrients in new locations, and occasionally sweeping away vegetation. But flash floods, despite their violence, are also opportunities. The sudden availability of water triggers rapid responses throughout the ecosystem. Seeds that have lain dormant for months or years suddenly germinate. Spadefoot toads, which spend most of their lives buried underground in a state of dormancy, emerge and rush to breed in temporary pools. Their tadpoles develop at astonishing speed, racing to mature before the water evaporates. Desert shrimp eggs, which can survive desiccated in dry lake beds for decades, hatch and complete their life cycles in a matter of weeks when rain creates temporary ponds. In some deserts, water arrives not as rain but as fog. The coastal deserts, the Atacama, the Namib, experience this phenomenon most dramatically. These deserts lie adjacent to cold ocean currents. The air above the water cools, and when it moves over land, it forms thick fog banks but rarely produces rain. Yet this fog represents a potential water source. Plants and animals have evolved various strategies to capture moisture from fog. Some plants have leaves or stem surfaces that promote condensation. Beetles collect fog droplets on their backs. In some places, human communities have even erected fog-catching nets, large mesh screens that intercept fog and channel the condensed water into collection tanks. Underground water is perhaps the most important water source in deserts, though it's invisible from the surface. Aquifers, layers of water-saturated rock or sediment beneath the ground, hold reserves accumulated over thousands of years, recharged slowly by the small amounts of precipitation that do infiltrate deeply into the soil. Desert plants with deep root systems tap into these aquifers. Oases form where the water table reaches the surface, or where geological formations allow groundwater to emerge as springs. Oases are crucial hotspots of biodiversity in deserts. These small patches of lush vegetation, sustained by reliable water, support far more life than the surrounding arid lands. Palm trees, reeds, and other water-loving plants grow densely. Birds congregate. Mammals visit to drink. Historically, oases have been vital for human survival in deserts, serving as stopping points along trade routes and as locations for permanent settlements. But aquifers are finite, and they're increasingly threatened. In many desert regions, humans extract groundwater faster than it's naturally replenished. Wells have to be drilled deeper each year. Springs that once flowed year-round now dry up. As groundwater levels drop, phreatophyte plants can no longer reach the water, and they die. The ecosystem changes, sometimes irreversibly. The sustainability of groundwater use in deserts is one of the critical environmental challenges of our time. Dew is another minor but important water source. On cool, clear nights, surfaces can cool below the dew point, causing water vapor from the air to condense. For small organisms, particularly insects, this nightly dew can be significant. Some plants, especially mosses and lichens in biological soil crusts, can absorb dew directly, using it for photosynthesis during the early morning hours before it evaporates. The arrival of water, whether as rain, fog, or dew, creates what ecologists call pulse dynamics. The desert ecosystem is not continuously active but pulses in response to water availability. When water arrives, there's a burst of activity. Seeds germinate, microbial activity surges, insects emerge, plants grow rapidly. Then, as the water disappears, absorbed, evaporated, or drained away, the system gradually returns to dormancy. This pulsing rhythm is fundamental to desert ecology. Life here is not about constant growth, but about responding quickly to opportunities and then enduring through the long periods of scarcity in between. Water in deserts is also tied to nutrient availability. Nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus are often present in desert soils but are locked in forms that plants can't easily access when the soil is dry. Water mobilizes these nutrients, dissolving them and making them available for uptake. Thus, the pulse of water availability is also a pulse of nutrient availability. The two are inseparable, and desert organisms have evolved to respond to both simultaneously. The scarcity of water in deserts means that even small changes can have large consequences. A slightly wetter year can trigger massive blooms of annual plants. A prolonged drought can cause die-offs of perennials that normally survive dry years. The variability is high, the margins thin. And this sensitivity makes desert ecosystems particularly vulnerable to climate change, which is altering precipitation patterns in ways that are difficult to predict but are already measurable in many regions. Types of deserts around the world. As you continue to rest, let's take a mental journey across the planet, visiting different types of deserts and understanding how they differ from one another. While all deserts share the common trait of aridity, they vary dramatically in temperature, geography, and the causes of their dryness. Each type presents unique challenges and has given rise to distinct communities of life. Hot deserts are what most people picture when they think of deserts. These are the Sahara, stretching across North Africa in a vast expanse of sand seas and rocky plateaus. The Arabian Desert, covering much of the Middle East. The Sonoran Desert of North America, with its iconic saguaro cacti. The Kalahari in southern Africa. The Great Sandy Desert of Australia. These deserts form primarily in subtropical regions, roughly between 15 and 30 degrees latitude north and south of the equator, where descending air masses create persistent high-pressure systems that inhibit cloud formation and precipitation. The Sahara is the largest hot desert in the world, spanning an area roughly the size of the United States. Its name comes from the Arabic word for desert, Sahara. Despite its reputation as a sea of sand, only about 20% of the Sahara is covered by sand dunes. The rest consists of rocky plateaus, gravel plains, and dry lake beds. Temperatures can exceed 50 degrees Celsius during summer days, but winter nights can dip below freezing in some areas. Life here includes fennec foxes with their enormous ears that dissipate heat, dromedary camels, desert hedgehogs, and a variety of reptiles and insects. Vegetation is sparse, but includes acacias, date palms in oases, and drought-resistant scrub. The Sonoran Desert, straddling the border between the southwestern United States and northwestern Mexico, is one of the most biologically diverse deserts in the world. It's famous for its saguaro cacti, which can live for 150 years and grow to heights of over 12 meters. The Sonoran receives moisture from 2 seasons: winter rains from the Pacific and summer monsoons from the Gulf of California. This dual rainy season allows for greater plant diversity than many other deserts. Creosote bushes, ocotillo, palo verde trees, and a spectacular array of cacti thrive here. Animal life is equally rich. Javelinas, Gila monsters, roadrunners, coyotes, rattlesnakes, and more than 500 species of birds either reside in or migrate through the Sonoran Desert. Cold deserts present a very different environment. The Gobi Desert in Mongolia and China is one of the largest cold deserts. Here, winters are long and brutal, with temperatures dropping to minus 40 degrees Celsius. Summers can still be quite warm, but the overall climate is cold, and much of the precipitation falls as snow. The vegetation is adapted to both aridity and freezing temperatures. Shrubs are low and sparse. Bactrian camels, which have 2 humps and thick winter coats, roam the Gobi. Wild Przewalski's horses, Gobi bears, and various antelope species have adapted to the harsh conditions. The Great Basin Desert in the western United States is another cold desert, lying in the rain shadow of the Sierra Nevada mountains. It receives less than 5 centimeters of precipitation annually, much of it as winter snow. Sagebrush dominates the landscape, giving the desert a distinctive gray-green hue. Pronghorn antelope, jackrabbits, and golden eagles are among the animals that live here. The Great Basin is unique among North American deserts for having almost no cacti, a reflection of its colder temperatures. Coastal deserts are formed by different mechanisms. The Atacama Desert in Chile is the driest place on Earth. Some weather stations in the Atacama have never recorded rainfall in the entire time they've been operational. The dryness is caused by the cold Humboldt Current offshore, which creates a temperature inversion that prevents clouds from forming and releasing precipitation. Instead, thick fog banks roll in, providing the only moisture available to life. Some plants and lichens in the Atacama have evolved to survive solely on fog moisture. In recent years, innovative water harvesting projects have installed large mesh nets to capture fog and provide water for nearby communities. The Namibe Desert in Namibia and Angola is another coastal desert, formed by the cold Benguela Current. Like the Atacama, the Namibe experiences frequent fog. The Namibe is famous for its towering sand dunes, some of which are among the tallest in the world, reaching heights of over 300 meters. The dunes are constantly reshaped by wind, creating a fluid, ever-changing landscape. The Namibe is home to extraordinary organisms adapted to fog-dependent existence, including the fog-basking beetle mentioned earlier and the bizarre Welwitschia plant, which can live for more than 1,000 years and consists of just 2 leaves that grow continuously throughout its life, becoming tattered and twisted by wind. Rain-shadowed deserts form on the leeward side of mountain ranges. When moisture-laden air encounters a mountain range, it's forced upward. As it rises, it cools and drops its moisture as rain or snow on the windward side. By the time the air descends on the other side, it's dry, creating arid conditions in the mountain's shadow. The Patagonian Desert in Argentina is a rain-shadowed desert created by the Andes Mountains. The Mojave Desert in the United States lies partly in the rain shadow of the Sierra Nevada. These deserts tend to be cooler than typical hot deserts, but still receive very little precipitation. Antarctica, though covered in ice, is technically a desert. It receives less precipitation than the Sahara. The interior of Antarctica is a frozen desert, where cold air holds very little moisture and precipitation is minimal. Life here is extremely limited. Mostly microorganisms in the soil, some lichens and mosses in slightly less harsh areas, and marine animals along the coasts. The Antarctic dry valleys are some of the most Mars-like environments on Earth, nearly devoid of life and receiving almost no precipitation. Each type of desert has given rise to unique adaptations and endemic species, organisms found nowhere else. The diversity of desert ecosystems across the globe is a testament to life's ability to colonize every available niche. From the ice-covered polar deserts to the scorching sands of the Sahara, from the fog-shrouded Atacama to the cold steppes of the Gobi, deserts demonstrate that aridity comes in many forms, and that life will find a way, no matter the specific challenges. Desert biodiversity and ecological relationships. Despite their reputation as barren wastelands, deserts harbor surprising biodiversity. The organisms that live in deserts may be less densely packed than in rainforests or coral reefs, but they're no less remarkable. Many species are highly specialized, found only in specific desert regions, and their interactions form intricate webs of dependence and coexistence. Plants in deserts often compete intensely for the limited water available, but they also engage in more subtle interactions. Some desert plants are allelopathic. They release chemicals into the soil that inhibit the growth of competing plants nearby. Creosote bushes, for instance, secrete compounds from their roots that create zones around the plant where other creosote seedlings and other species struggle to establish. This chemical warfare helps reduce competition for water. The result is the regularly spaced, almost geometric distribution of creosote bushes across some desert landscapes, each plant maintaining its personal space. But not all plant interactions are competitive. Some are cooperative. Nurse plant relationships are common in deserts. A large, established plant, often a shrub or small tree, provides shade and slightly cooler, moister conditions beneath its canopy. Seeds of other species germinate more successfully in this microhabitat than in the open. Young saguaro cacti, for instance, almost always establish beneath a nurse plant, typically a palo verde tree or an ironwood. The young cactus benefits from the shade and protection. Eventually, as the saguaro grows larger, it may outlive the nurse plant and stand alone, but in its youth, it needed that assistance. Pollination relationships in deserts are often highly specialized. Because water is scarce, plants cannot afford to flower continuously. Instead, they time their flowering to coincide with periods when pollinators are active and when resources are available to produce seeds. Many desert plants are pollinated by specific insects, birds, or even bats. The saguaro cactus, for example, produces large white flowers that bloom at night and are primarily pollinated by lesser, long-nosed bats. These bats migrate north from Mexico to Arizona each spring, timing their arrival to coincide with the saguaro bloom. The bats get nectar and pollen, while the cactus gets pollinated, a mutualistic relationship that both species depend on. Other plants are pollinated by hummingbirds or by bees. Some desert flowers have evolved specific shapes, colors, or scent profiles that attract particular pollinators while excluding others. This specialization can be risky. If the pollinator population declines, the plant may fail to reproduce, but it also reduces competition with other plants for pollinator attention. Seed dispersal in deserts also involves intricate relationships. Some desert plants produce seeds with barbs or hooks that attach to the fur of passing animals, hitching a ride to new locations. Others produce seeds encased in fruits that are eaten by animals. The seeds pass through the digestive system and are deposited elsewhere, often with a convenient package of fertilizer. Some desert ants are specialized seed harvesters, and they create extensive underground granaries where they store seeds. Not all stored seeds are eaten, and some germinate near ant nests, benefiting from the slightly richer soil conditions created by the ants' activities. Symbiotic relationships extend below ground as well. Many desert plants form associations with mycorrhizal fungi. These fungi colonize plant roots, extending thread-like hyphae into the surrounding soil far beyond where the roots alone could reach. The fungi absorb water and nutrients, particularly phosphorus, and share them with the plant. In return, the plant provides the fungi with carbohydrates produced through photosynthesis. This partnership is crucial in desert soils, which are often deficient in organic matter and nutrients. Some estimates suggest that more than 90% of desert plants engage in mycorrhizal relationships, animal, Interactions in deserts are equally complex. Predator-prey relationships are shaped by the challenges of the environment. Many desert prey species are pale-colored, blending into sandy or rocky backgrounds. Predators, too, are often camouflaged. Rattlesnakes, for instance, have patterns that break up their outlines against desert substrates, making them difficult for both prey and potential threats to spot. Some desert animals engage in kleptoparasitism, stealing food collected by others. Certain species of beetles wait near the burrows of harvester ants, intercepting workers carrying seeds back to the colony and stealing their loads. This behavior is risky, but saves the thief the effort of foraging. Scavenging is particularly important in deserts because the sparse distribution of organisms means that fresh carrion represents a valuable resource. Vultures, with their keen eyesight, can spot carcasses from great distances. Ravens and coyotes also scavenge widely. The rapid consumption and recycling of dead animals helps prevent nutrients from being locked up for long periods. Some of the most fascinating interactions involve organisms that modify the environment in ways that benefit others. We've already discussed how isopods create nutrient-rich patches around their burrows. Similarly, burrowing owls and other animals that dig burrows provide shelter not just for themselves, but for a variety of other species. Desert tortoises dig burrows that are later used by snakes, insects, and small mammals. These burrows serve as refuges from temperature extremes and predators, and they maintain higher humidity than surface conditions. Desert ecosystems also contain endemic species, organisms found nowhere else on Earth. Island-like habitats, such as isolated mountain ranges in deserts, known as sky islands, harbor unique species that evolved in isolation. The American Southwest, for instance, has numerous sky islands where populations of plants and animals have diverged from their counterparts in other mountain ranges, leading to high levels of endemism. One of the remarkable aspects of desert biodiversity is how much of it remains undiscovered or poorly studied. The harsh conditions make fieldwork difficult, and many desert organisms are small, cryptic, or spend much of their lives underground or dormant. New species of insects, arachnids, reptiles, and even mammals are still being discovered in desert regions around the world. Each discovery adds another piece to our understanding of how life persists in extreme conditions. Threats to desert ecosystems. Now, as we move deeper into the night, it's important to acknowledge that desert ecosystems, despite their resilience, are facing unprecedented threats. These arid lands, which have persisted for millennia and supported unique forms of life, are changing rapidly due to human activities and a shifting climate. Understanding these threats is essential if we hope to protect what remains. Climate change is altering deserts in complex ways. Rising global temperatures are making hot deserts even hotter. Heat waves are becoming more frequent and more intense. But the effects go beyond simple warming. Climate change is also disrupting precipitation patterns. Some desert regions are becoming drier, with longer intervals between rain events and more severe droughts. Others are experiencing more intense but less frequent rainfall, leading to increased flash flooding and erosion. These changes destabilize ecosystems that have evolved to cope with specific historical patterns of water availability. For desert plants with life cycles tuned to particular rainfall regimes, altered precipitation can be catastrophic. If the timing of rain shifts, seeds may germinate during periods when conditions won't support growth to maturity. If the total annual rainfall declines, even hardy perennials may die. And as temperatures rise, the rate of evaporation increases, meaning that the same amount of rainfall provides less actual water availability to plants. Animals, too, are affected. Species with narrow temperature tolerances may find their habitable ranges shrinking. Those that time breeding or migration to match historical climate patterns may find themselves out of sync with resource availability. Small shifts can cascade through food webs, affecting predators and prey in the ways that are difficult to predict. Desertification, the process by which previously semi-arid or arid lands become full deserts, is expanding. This is often driven by a combination of climate change and human land use. Overgrazing by livestock is a major cause. When too many animals graze in a limited area, they remove vegetation faster than it can regenerate. Without plant cover, the soil becomes exposed to wind and water erosion. The protective biological soil crusts are destroyed by trampling hooves. The soil loses nutrients and structure, making it harder for plants to re-establish even if grazing pressure is reduced. The land degrades into a less productive state, often irreversibly within human timescales. Agriculture in desert regions, particularly irrigated agriculture, can have devastating effects. In many areas, water for irrigation is drawn from ancient, non-renewable aquifers. These fossil aquifers contain water accumulated over thousands or tens of thousands of years. Once depleted, they're gone. Yet they're being drained at astonishing rates in places like the Middle East, North Africa, and the southwestern United States. As water tables drop, springs dry up, oases disappear, and ecosystems that depend on groundwater collapse. Irrigation itself can degrade soil through salinization, when water is applied to the surface and then evaporates. It leaves behind dissolved salts. Over time, these salts accumulate in the soil, reaching concentrations that are toxic to most plants. Large areas of formerly productive irrigated land have been abandoned due to salinization, particularly in arid regions where drainage is poor. Mining and energy extraction are also significant threats. Deserts often contain valuable mineral deposits and fossil fuels. Mining operations strip vegetation, disturb soil, and can contaminate groundwater. Roads and infrastructure fragment habitat, and dust from mining activities can damage biological soil crusts across wide areas. The recovery time for these disturbed areas can be centuries. Off-road vehicle recreation, driving ATVs, dirt bikes, or four-wheel drive vehicles across desert landscapes, causes severe damage to fragile desert surfaces. Tire tracks crush biological soil crusts, compact soil, and create pathways for erosion. A single vehicle pass can leave a scar that persists for decades. In popular recreation areas, networks of tracks crisscross the landscape, fragmenting habitat and degrading ecosystem function. Tourism, while potentially beneficial if managed sustainably, can also harm deserts. Foot traffic damages crusts and disturbs wildlife. Campfires remove wood that would otherwise provide shelter and nutrients. Littering and human waste introduce pollutants. As more people seek wilderness experiences, the cumulative impact can be substantial even if individual visitors are well-intentioned. Invasive species are another serious threat, particularly in North American deserts. Plants like bufflegrass, tamarisk, and cheatgrass have been introduced accidentally or intentionally and have spread aggressively, outcompeting native vegetation. These invasives often alter fire regimes. Many desert plants are not adapted to fire and are killed by even low-intensity burns. But invasive grasses create continuous fuel loads that allow fires to spread more easily. After a fire, the invasives often recover faster than natives, creating a feedback loop that can transform entire landscapes. Urban expansion into desert areas brings a host of problems. Cities like Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Dubai have grown rapidly in recent decades, sprawling across desert lands. Urban development destroys habitat directly. It also alters local hydrology, creates heat islands that further stress surrounding ecosystems, and fragments remaining natural areas. The demand for water to support these cities drains aquifers and rivers, often at unsustainable rates. Even something as seemingly benign as collecting firewood can have impacts. In many desert regions, people collect dead wood for fuel. But dead wood in deserts provides crucial habitat for insects, reptiles, and small mammals. It also contributes to nutrient cycling as it slowly decomposes. Removing it depletes these resources and impoverishes the ecosystem. The cumulative effect of all these threats is a global decline in the health and extent of functioning desert ecosystems. Species extinctions are occurring, though often unnoticed because desert biodiversity is less well studied than that of more accessible ecosystems. Ecosystem services like carbon storage, soil stabilization, and watershed function are being degraded, and the communities that depend on desert resources for their livelihoods face increasing hardship. Conservation and the future. Yet there is a reason for hope. Across the world, efforts are underway to protect and restore desert ecosystems, and there's growing recognition of their value. Conservation in deserts requires strategies tailored to the unique characteristics of these environments, and increasingly, these strategies are being informed by both scientific research and the traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples and local communities who have lived in deserts for generations. Protected areas are one of the primary tools for desert conservation. National parks, wilderness areas, and reserves have been established in desert regions on every continent. These protected areas serve multiple functions. They safeguard habitat for threatened species, preserve representative examples of desert ecosystems, provide baselines for scientific research, and offer opportunities for people to experience and appreciate desert landscapes. Places like Death Valley National Park in California, the Sahara's reserves in Niger and Chad, the Simpson Desert Reserves in Australia, and the Namib Naukluft. Park in Namibia protect vast stretches of desert from development and unsustainable use. However, simply designating an area as protected is not enough. Effective management is crucial. This means controlling access, preventing poaching and illegal resource extraction, managing invasive species, and monitoring ecosystem health. It also means engaging with local communities, ensuring that conservation efforts don't unfairly burden those who live in and around protected areas. Restoration ecology is an emerging field that seeks to repair degraded desert lands. This is challenging work. Desert ecosystems recover slowly. Re-establishing native vegetation requires a careful selection of species, appropriate timing of planting to coincide with rainfall, protection from grazing, and patience. Biological soil crusts are particularly difficult to restore. Some researchers are experimenting with inoculating degraded soils with crust organisms, but success has been limited and highly variable. Soil stabilization is often a first step in restoration. Techniques include spreading mulch or straw to protect bare soil, installing erosion barriers, and planting fast-growing pioneer species. In some cases, deliberately engineering small-scale landscape features, microtopography that catches water and seeds, can accelerate recovery. Water management is central to desert conservation. Sustainable use of groundwater requires setting extraction limits based on recharge rates, not current demand. This is politically difficult because it often means reducing water allocations to agriculture or cities, but it's necessary for long-term sustainability. Protecting springs, streams, and riparian areas is also critical. These rare water sources support disproportionately high biodiversity and serve as refuges and corridors for wildlife. Removing invasive species is labor-intensive but essential. Mechanical removal, herbicides, and sometimes biological control agents are used. In areas where invasive grasses have increased fire frequency, fire management strategies need to change. Rather than suppressing all fires, managers may need to conduct controlled burns during favorable conditions to reduce fuel loads while minimizing damage to native vegetation. Community-based conservation recognizes that people who live in and depend on deserts must be partners in conservation efforts. Indigenous communities often possess detailed knowledge of desert ecology accumulated over centuries. This traditional ecological knowledge includes understanding of plant uses, animal behavior, water sources, and sustainable harvesting practices. Conservation projects that incorporate this knowledge and provide tangible benefits to local communities are more likely to succeed in the long term than top-down approaches imposed from outside. Ecotourism, when done responsibly, can generate income for local communities while incentivizing conservation. Visitors bring money that can support protected areas and provide livelihoods for guides, hospitality workers, and craftspeople. But ecotourism must be carefully managed to avoid the degradation that mass tourism can cause. Education and outreach are also important. Many people view deserts as empty, worthless lands. Changing this perception requires helping people appreciate desert biodiversity, beauty, and ecological importance. School programs, interpretive centers at parks, documentaries, and even online content can play roles in building appreciation and understanding. International cooperation is necessary for desert conservation because many deserts cross national borders. Migratory species move between countries. Dust storms and air pollution cross borders. Climate change is a global phenomenon. Collaborative efforts, international treaties, and shared research initiatives help address these transboundary challenges. Technological innovations are also contributing to conservation. Remote sensing from satellites allows monitoring of desert vegetation, soil conditions, and water resources over large areas. This data helps detect changes early, identify degraded areas needing restoration, and enforce protected area boundaries. Drones are used for detailed mapping and monitoring. Genetic tools help identify distinct populations and guide breeding programs for threatened species. Perhaps most important is the recognition that deserts are not disposable. They are ecosystems with intrinsic value, home to unique life forms and providers of important ecosystem services. They stabilize soils, store carbon, moderate local climates, and offer opportunities for scientific discovery and spiritual renewal. They are part of Earth's diversity, irreplaceable and worth protecting. The future of desert ecosystems depends on choices we make now. If we continue unsustainable water extraction, unchecked land degradation, and fail to address climate change, many desert ecosystems will continue to decline. Species will go extinct, ecosystem services will be lost, and human communities that depend on these lands will suffer. But if we choose to act, to protect, restore, and use deserts sustainably, then these remarkable places can persist, continuing to support the unique forms of life that have evolved within them and providing benefits to both nature and people far into the future. Closing reflection. And now, as we reach the end of our journey through deserts, let's take a moment to reflect on what these places teach us. Deserts show us that life is not fragile, but astonishingly resilient. That abundance is not measured only in biomass or density, but in the ingenuity of adaptation and the diversity of solutions to common problems. That scarcity can foster not weakness, but specialization, not emptiness, but a different kind of fullness. In deserts, every organism is a master of its craft. Every cactus, every scorpion, every grain of sand bound in a biological crust represents millions of years of refinement. These are not failed forests or degraded grasslands. They are ecosystems complete unto themselves, shaped by the fundamental constraint of water into something unique and extraordinary. We tend to value what is lush, what is green, what is obviously teeming with life. But there is profound beauty in austerity, in the stark contrasts of desert landscapes, in the silence of vast spaces under endless skies. There is wonder in the fact that even in the driest places on Earth, where it seems impossible that anything could survive, life finds a way. As you rest tonight, consider your own relationship with deserts. Perhaps you've visited one, felt the dry heat or the surprising cold, seen the stars unobscured by moisture or light pollution. Perhaps you've never set foot in a desert but have been touched by images or stories. These places are part of our shared planetary heritage. They belong to all of us, and we all have a stake in their preservation. The air you breathe has passed over deserts. The dust that settles on distant mountains often originates in deserts, carrying nutrients across continents. The lessons we learn from desert organisms about water conservation, about resilience, about living within limits, have applications far beyond arid lands. In a world facing water scarcity, climate change, and environmental degradation, deserts have much to teach us. You are connected to deserts even if you never see one. And the health of these ecosystems matters for the health of the entire planet. They are not margins or afterthoughts, but integral parts of Earth's living systems. When we protect deserts, we protect biodiversity, cultural heritage, and the processes that maintain our world's environmental stability. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, imagine yourself lying on warm sand as the sun sets and the first stars appear. Feel the day's heat slowly dissipating. Hear the quiet rustle of life beginning to stir. Know that even in the seeming emptiness of the desert, you are surrounded by life, hidden, adapted, resilient life that has found its place in one of Earth's most challenging environments. If these explorations have brought you some peace or sparked your curiosity, I hope you'll like this video and subscribe to the Sleepy Science Society. It helps others find these journeys through science and nature, one quiet evening at a time. Rest well. The deserts of the world continue their slow, ancient rhythms, indifferent to our observation but worthy of our attention and care. And you, wherever you are part of the same world, the same system of air and water and life, circulating endlessly across this beautiful, diverse, resilient planet we call home. Sleep softly and dream of distant horizons, of life persisting against odds, of the quiet, enduring beauty of Earth's driest places. Good night.